Archaeologist, philosopher, bonsai aficionado, author, black belt, and squanderer of over 50,000 hours watching B-movies. He uses this wealth of useless knowledge to bring you classic movie reviews with snark and world-famous short summaries. Now broadcasting from beautiful downtown Tallahassee, it's Classic Movie Reviews with Snark.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. You can also go to snarkymoviereviews.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. This movie is the fifth of the October 2015 films, although it may come out on November 1st or 2nd. Happy All Saints Day. The Last Man on Earth, 1964, is an adaptation of the 1954 novel I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I think I said 1964 in the two previous episodes. Sorry about that.
It turns out that the early reports were wrong. All wrong. Sorry about that.
The great Vincent Price plays the leading role of Dr. Robert Morgan. Price is the master of the macabre, and many people incorrectly believe him to be English. In fact, he was born in St. Louis, Missouri. Price was from a wealthy family, as his grandfather invented some kind of baking soda. He graduated from Yale University and then entered the University of London. It was at this time that he was bitten by the acting bug. He began working on the stage in 1934 and in film with the Mercury Theater Group. Price had a long and varied movie career. He was also active in television, radio, and music at the same time with a total of 199 credits. Like most actors, he started out as a character actor, and his first role was Service Deluxe, 1938. He played Sir Walter Raleigh as a sneaky cuss, aligned against Errol Flynn as Essex, in The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex, 1939. That same year, he played a murdering royal killing his way to the throne in Tower of London, 1939. Co-stars in this movie were Basil Rathbone and Boris Karloff. The 1940s brought Price closer to the type of roles he's now known for. Price was cast as the title role in The Invisible Man Returns, 1940. Price was cast as the prosecutor in The Song of Bernadette, 1943. In the film noir Laura, 1944, Price played the slimy boyfriend of Gene Tierney's character, Laura. In Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, 1948, Price voiced the part of the Invisible Man at the end of the film. Price returned to another costume drama as the evil Richelieu in The Three Musketeers, 1948. Following Laura, 1944, Price had a number of film noir roles that include The Web, 1947, The Long Night, 1947, Rogue's Regiment, 1948, and The Bribe, 1949. In The Baron of Arizona, 1950, Price plays a con man trying to use forged Spanish documents to obtain ownership of the state of Arizona. Price said Champagne for Caesar, 1950, was one of his favorite roles. He played an out-of-work genius that takes to a game show to bankrupt a company that refused to hire him. The company responds by recruiting a femme fatale to knock him off his game. In The Ten Commandments, 1956, directed by Cecil B. DeMille, Price played the head pyramid builder. It was around this time that Price really got into the horror genre. Films during this period include House of Wax, 1953, an early 3D movie, The Story of Mankind, 1957, where Price played the devil, The Fly, 1958, House on Haunted Hill, 1959, Return of the Fly, 1959, The Bat, 1959, The Tingler, 1959, House of Usher, 1960, Pit and the Pendulum, 1961, Confessions of an Opium Eater, 1962, Tower of London, again, 1962, The Comedy of Terrors, 1963, really a horror comedy, The Haunted Palace, 1963, The Raven, 1963, The Last Man on Earth, 1964, The Mask of the Red Death, 1964, The Tomb of Ligeia, 1964, House of a Thousand Dolls, 1967, and The Oblong Box, 1969. Price also had time for some fun movies such as Beach Party, 1963, Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine, 1965, and Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs, 1966. Price was active in the music business for a time. He added a backing track to the Monster Mash in 1976. He contributed to Alice Cooper's album, that's a collection of non-digital songs, Welcome to My Nightmare in 1975, and finally performed a spine-chilling speech on Michael Jackson's album Thriller in 1982. This, of course, was the best part of the album and the video, in my humble opinion. Price did a ton of voice work and other media during his later years. His last major film was Edward Scissorhands in 1990 as the inventor. Price died at the age of 82 of lung cancer in 1993. This movie was shot in Rome, and the other actors are Italian. Franca Battua played the role of Ruth Collins. She had 23 movie credits, with the majority being in Italian. She was in Duel of Champions 1961 with Alan Ladd. Born in 1936, she is still alive. Emma Daniela played the role of Virginia Morgan. She had 16 roles as an actress. She lived from 1936 to 1998, dying at the young age of 61. Giacomo Rosie Stewart was cast as Ben Cortman. He had 92 acting credits, but not much that would be known to an American audience. He was born in 1925 and died in 1994. Umberto Rajo was cast as Dr. Mercer. He had 130 acting credits. He was born in 1922 and amazingly is still alive. Story. The movie opens with a deserted city. Now that I know that it was filmed in Rome, I can see the European cars and architectural styling. Unlike The World, the Flesh, and the Devil, there are bodies in the streets. The sign on the local church reads, quote, "The end has come," unquote. Dr. Robert Morgan, Vincent Price, is shown through his boarded windows sleeping. When the alarm rings at 6 a.m., he states, "Another day to live through. Better get going."
Another day to live through. Better get started.
The plague has been going for 3 years, and it's now 1968.
December 1965. Is that all it has been since I inherited the world? Only 3 years. Seems like 100 million.
As the credits roll, he checks the garlic for freshness. Like Neville would do later in the Omega Man 1971, he has a generator in his garage. Unlike Neville, he has to get out of his car and manually open the garage door. In his yard are dead bodies. Morgan says they live off the weak ones. After coffee, he broadcasts on his ham radio looking for others. He says they are repelled by their images in mirrors. His mission for the day is to replace the garlic. He is also using a grid to exterminate the others. He makes some first-class wooden stakes on his lathe. Outside, he loads the dead bodies into his car. He fuels his car at the tanker truck before heading to the pit that is still smoldering from the burning dead bodies. He throws the 2 new bodies into the pit. Morgan's next stop is the grocery store, where another generator is keeping a large supply of meat and garlic fresh. So by now we have enough information to know that the others are vampires. Next, he goes to a mirror store. That's something you don't see much anymore. Finally, he gets to his search, where he stakes a few vampires before hauling them to the pit. An hour before sundown, he heads back to his house, where he hangs garlic and mirrors over the boarded windows and doors. That night, the vampires follow their leader to the house. They holler for Morgan to come out.
Morgan, come out. Come out.
He drinks and listens to jazz music. Does that seem familiar? He wakes on the couch in the morning because of a nightmare. He rues another day. Instead of working on survival, Morgan walks away from the lathe and travels to a mausoleum. I assume that this is supposed to be his wife's grave. He stays too long and it gets dark. He fights his way through the vampires because they are slow and weak. When he gets to his home, the leader and the gang are there. He fights through part of a slow group at his house and uses a mirror to make it inside. Later, he smokes, drinks, and watches home movies of his wife, Emma Daniele, and baby girl. He becomes very melancholy and does some crazy laughing mixed with crying. The leader and his gang are back outside. Morgan flashes back to his daughter's 7th birthday. When Uncle Ben shows up, damn, he's the leader of the vampires. Giacomo Rosie Stewart. I mean, not at the birthday party, but 3 years in the future. Ben shows Morgan a clip about a European plague being airborne. Morgan is a scientist working on the disease, but so far they have not found a way to destroy it. Morgan's daughter and wife get sick, but he carries on like normal. He leaves his family to work at the lab and finds out that America has lost contact with the rest of the world. Ben comes in, and he is a scientist also. They talk about the pit where the bodies are being burned. Ben keeps talking about the vampires. That night, the governor declares a disaster and says all bodies must be burned. In the morning, Morgan's daughter goes blind. His wife is sick with fear, and he tells her not to call a doctor. Morgan leaves to pick up Ben and goes to work. Outside, soldiers are hauling away dead bodies. When he gets to Ben's house, it is the house he is later going to defend. Ben has it set up with garlic and mirrors. So Ben preps and Morgan takes over his prep house. Somehow not fair. When Morgan gets to work without Ben, only he and Dr. Mercer, Humberto Rajo, are there. When Morgan gets home that night, the soldiers are hauling something away from his house. His wife has done the one thing he asked her not to do, and when the daughter dies, she was hauled away to the pit. Morgan drives to the pit to find his daughter's body.
Hey, you don't belong in here. Get out. I said get out. I want my daughter. Mister, a lot of daughters are in there, including my own.
Back at the house, his wife goes blind and dies quickly. Morgan sneaks the body out of the house and buries her in an empty field. That night, his dead wife returns to the house as a vampire and tries to kill him. Since Morgan is still alive, he probably killed her, but they didn't show it. Back in current time, Ben and his gang of vampires are still coming every night to try and kill Morgan. The vampires destroy his car. The next morning he goes to the car dealership and says a convertible would be nice. Man, free convertibles are a theme. But he chooses a wagon for hauling bodies. When he gets back with his new car, he sees a dog. He is happy to see something else alive, but the dog runs away and Morgan can't catch him. He runs by one of those World's Fair spaceships from Men in Black and sees some bodies that have been killed with iron stakes. He now knows others are alive but doesn't know why he hasn't seen them. The dog shows back up, but it has been wounded.
Nobody's going to hurt you. Everything's going to be all right. All right. You're going to get better. We're going to have lots of happy times together.
After being happy that the dog is there, Morgan checks his blood, and the dog has the virus. In the morning, Morgan buries the staked dog. When he finishes, he looks up and sees a girl dressed like a hipster. He chases her, and then she follows Morgan back to the house. The girl introduces herself as Ruth Collins, Franca Batoy. He stuffs garlic in her face and she reacts badly. She says she has a weak stomach. He wants to give her a blood test, but she refuses. Good old Ben and his gang show up and start hitting the house with sticks.
Come out, Morgan.
Hear that? That's Ben Cortland. He was my friend.
Your friend?
He was like a kid brother. If I could find him and destroy him.
But you said he was your friend.
When I find him, I'll drive a stake through him just like all the others.
Morgan tells Ruth that he may be immune because he was bitten by a vampire bat when he was working in Panama. Ruth goes into her room and fails the vampire test. Remember from Billy the Kid versus Dracula? Morgan walks in and Ruth is getting ready to take a vaccine that holds off the disease. Her society is organized and wants to rebuild. She tells him he's a monster to her people and that many of the ones he has killed were still alive. Ruth says her people are coming to kill him and she pulls a gun. Then she passes out. When Ruth is out, Morgan gives her a direct transfusion, curing her of the disease. He gives her the vampire test with a mirror and she passes. He double-checks with garlic. About this time, Ben breaks into the house and drags Ruth outside where he bites her. Just at that time, Ruth's people show up and kill the vampires around the house. They shoot Ben off the roof and begin chasing Morgan, ignoring Ruth's feeble cries not to hurt him. Morgan makes it to the armory where he gets tear gas and escapes on the ledge. The gang chases him to a church as Morgan throws tear gas and fires back with Ruth's gun. Morgan is wounded in the side but makes it inside the church. He staggers onto the altar before giving them a tirade.
Freaks! All of you. All of you freaks! Mutations!
One of the men throws a spear into Morgan's chest. He dies as Ruth says, "They didn't know." Ruth stops by a crying baby and says, "Don't cry. We're all safe now." The author of the novel, I Am Legend 1954, worked on the movie script but was not happy, so he used an assumed name. Director George A. Romero stated that this movie was the model for Night of the Living Dead 1968. World-famous short summary. Widowers miss their chance for happiness because her friends don't approve. If you enjoyed this week's show, please tell your friends, and if you really want to help, drop over to iTunes and give me a review. If you want to comment, recommend a movie, or just say hi, follow the links in the show note to my site. I have SpeakPipe so you can leave audio feedback as well. Beware the Moors.